Well, now there has been yet another twist in the Nigel Farage versus Nat-West debanking debacle. Despite receiving a formal apology for suggesting she had broken data protection laws earlier this week, it has now been announced that ex-NatWest boss Dame Alison Rose will lose out on a £7.6 million payout, although she will still receive her £2.4 million fixed pay package. Oh, poor her. Dame Alison will not benefit from the share awards and bonuses she was previously entitled to. NatWest has said its former boss had not been given good leaver status. If she had, she would have been entitled to the full amount. The former chief exec stepped down in July after disclosing personal details about Farage's account with Coutts, owned by NatWest, to a BBC reporter when they sat next to each other at a cosy little dinner. So, is this right? Should she even be receiving anything?
Joining us, loaning us his expertise on the matter. See what I did there? Loaning us. Yeah, clever, wasn't it? A warm welcome to Spiked Online editor Tom Slater. Yeah, Tom, I mean, it strikes me that she's beginning to edge towards getting her just desserts here. But I think the scandal is, until this development today, when we learned that she won't be walking away with what we'd heard, £11.3 million, that NatWest, which I believe is partly owned by British taxpayers, had decided that even though she lied to the BBC about why Nigel Farage was being debanked, and indeed disclosed personal financial details of a customer, Nigel Farage, to the BBC's economics editor, even though she did that, broke the banking code, broke every law in the banking book, or every rule in the banking book, brought her bank into disrepute, NatWest decided until today that she was worth the full £11.3 billion. This is the British establishment at work, isn't it? You know, looking after the great and the good, nothing succeeds like failure. I mean, they've been brought into line now, but what were they thinking when they thought she warranted a full £11.3 million payoff?
I mean, that was always the concern, wasn't it? Because of the fact that would this just be something where she kind of quietly resigns, takes her north of £10 million and goes and gets on with her life without that kind of full sense of the consequences being felt. I think it's encouraging the fact that they haven't really been able to get away with that in this particular case. Certainly Nigel Farage hasn't let up on this particular issue. Various people in the media, the Telegraph, etc., have continued to report on what was going on here, making it abundantly clear that this was a case of clear-cut political discrimination. Effectively, the Telegraph reporting a couple of weeks ago that you had members of staff who were gloating around the time that it had taken place. So, as you say, she's walking away about £2.5 million as we all reach for the world's tiniest violin. But that probably is about as much as she could get away with, given the rest of it was what was discretionary, what was essentially down to the decision-making of NatWest Group. They did have this kind of internal review by the Travis Smith law firm. We believe, based on the reporting, that was the basis for the decision to strip her of that £7.5 million. But I can't be the only one thinking that if it wasn't for the sustained pressure, scrutiny, campaigning against NatWest for what it's done here, we might have ended up with a different outcome, which, as you say, would have been outrageous, given that it's still, I believe, 39% owned by the taxpayer still at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, actually. And I think what's quite remarkable here is NatWest's own line doesn't seem to add up, because one minute they said she did no wrong, we found no problem here. And then they're saying, well, she's not on good leaver status. So they seem to be having a bit of a volte-face when it comes to their attitude. I mean, this is the story, some might say, of one man's bank account, a man who I'm incredibly close to, worked with for many years and is a good friend of mine. But it's much more than that, isn't it? Why is this so important?
I think it's so important because this is only the case that we've heard about. I mean, first of all, there's been a string of other cases of quite prominent people, particularly people involved in politics, who naturally come under kind of more intense, over-the-top regulations. So Gina Miller, bête noire of many of us Brexiteers, she's gone public with the fact that her own True and Fair party was debanked by Monzo. There's also been various politicians who have said that even their family members have had a lot of trouble getting bank accounts because of these burdensome regulations, and in some cases people suspecting more political discrimination as well. But the thing that concerns me, and I think the reason this has been an issue that's hit home with so many people, is that there are clearly going to be so many cases of people who are being debanked, who do not have their own television show, who do not have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Twitter followers, who aren't going to be able to make as much of a fuss about this. The one case that many people have been pointing to, of course, was the Reverend Richard Fothergill in Yorkshire, who was debanked by the Yorkshire Building Society reportedly because he took issue and complained about a pride display within his local branch, was asking why it had been kept up for so long, and he was explicitly debanked on that basis. So the concern is that underneath the surface there's going to be all these different cases. There was a report a few months ago about the fact that banks, we don't know why, but banks are currently kicking about 1,000 people a day out of their accounts. We don't know why that's taking place, but certainly we need more scrutiny, because the natural concern will be that whilst this has happened to some prominent individuals, it could easily be happening to people as well who don't have that kind of recourse that someone like Nigel Farage might have.
Yeah, points very well made. Tom Slater,
Thanks,
editor
Tom.
of Spiked. Thank you ever so much. I mean, still, a couple of million quid, not bad for someone who wiped 18% of NatWest stock price.
If I was a shareholder in NatWest, I'd be wanting to know why it was that after she disgraced herself and her bank, that the NatWest board thought she warranted a full £11.3 million payout. Why did they ever think that? They've been brought into line now, but the question is, why did they think she warranted this full payoff when she disgraced the bank and herself?